The Solaran War by Echo Ishii, Chapter 1. Tenoch watched as Enhat personnel and service robots loaded boxes, furniture, supplies, clothing, and anything they could on the ragtag assembly of ships left in the dock. From this perch, on top of his first-class star cruiser, the Itzcoatl, he looked down at the scene below him and looked up at the spiral layers that made up the 300 floors of the space station. He was up here, refiguring the transceivers, to get any news he could on incoming Solaran dreadnoughts. Finishing his task, Tenoch slid down the sides to the floor of the station. A few of the aliens took a wide-eyed glance, but looked away. Enhat, like him, in full serpent tails, were rare. He raised himself up further, his body allowing him to tower over the rest. So many were fleeing: Getek, Enhat, and dozens of other species. An immediate evacuation of Gateway Station 99-2 because the humans were loosing to the Solarans, and no one wanted to be here when the Solarans arrived. The Enhat had no conflict with the Solarans, nor any love for them. His people had their own clandestine stellar gateways to their own system, and liked it that way. Tenoch was part of a team of private retrieval agents, a fancy term for bounty hunters, with substantially better pay. Huiza, also Nahat, was part of his team on the Itzcoatl. They also worked closely with a Getek woman named Raim. Raim had already returned to their home system. Tenoch and Huiza were heading home when the signal was sent for any and all Enhat ships to come to the station and evacuate its people and property. Huiza was guiding androids to load as much as they could. Tenoch's ship was built for fight and speed, so there wasn't much space for passengers, but they had orders to take on all they could. He was up here, refiguring the transceivers, to get any news he could on incoming Solaran dreadnoughts. Huiza came over to him, his dark black skin with deep red lines visible under his hood. "We can fit a few dozen passengers, a tight fit, but we can manage," he told him. "We are loading as much as we can, mostly weapons, because we have the secure means to store it compared to the other ships. The Itzcoatl was designed for speed and stealth. Transport space was always limited." "I reset the force field codes," Tenoch replied, "and our weapons are at full capacity." He slithered across the deck, taking note of every ship on hand. The ambassador's shuttle was still here, strange because she should have left the stations at the first sign of trouble. There were about 5 legitimate military transports, but the rest were a hodgepodge of delivery cruisers and yacht. 5 transports, the ambassador's ship, and his own. Not enough to take on a fleet of Solaran dreadnoughts. They had to abandon base and reach the Stellar Gateway. Tactically, he would take the lead. The transports couldn't risk the lives of so many, and the ambassador was unlikely to risk her own. That was typical of a politician. A stream of aliens got on the elevators, headed for the upper levels. One of the Garanga, a rare species in this sector, rushed past, on all 4 feet, only rising up on their back legs to carry more equipment. There were quite a few Getek. They had been in the all-worlds sector far longer than most. And then he saw her, a human woman, step into the elevator to make her way down. That was unusual. He wasn't aware of too many humans who used the lower-level secured vaults, and she was a fool. As a human, she needed to be off this station more than anyone else. The Solarans loathed them. It would not go well for her. "I thought it was a Solaran at first," Huiza said behind him, gesturing towards the woman. "Humans and Solarans look similar at first glance to the untrained eye," Tenoch mumbled under his breath as he went closer to the elevator. He wasn't entirely sure what drove him. He needed to know why she was still down here. "We are ordered to clear this area completely. We can't have the Solarans have anything." He moved closer at great speed, whipping through the crowd and following the elevator all the way down. The vaults were dark, with blue lights along the walls for alien eyes to see. Enhat and a few others had night vision, but most aliens did not. Humans definitely did not. When the power grid was shut down, he wondered how this human intended to find her way back. If she was down here, in the midst of all this chaos, her reasons must be more important than her life. When he reached the bottom, Tenoch slid out. He could hear her footfalls and turned towards them. She was down in the narrow tunnels. He moved quietly, quickly. It was better if she did not know he was here. He didn't suspect her of anything nefarious, but if she meant to sabotage Anhat property, it was better to catch her by surprise. Tenoch turned the corner. He stretched out, his hands along the sides of the wall. He had a stun baton in his grip. His other rifle was slung along his back. She was bent down, going through the pattern of sequences to unlock her vault. Her back was exposed. Clearly, she wasn't an agent or a soldier, probably just some wealthy woman who didn't know any better. "I don't know who you are, but I can assure you that anything you might have in that vault is not worth your life," Tenoch told her. She turned briefly to look at him as the final panel slid open. Her eyes went wide in shock, but she quickly focused back and grabbed at a small satchel in the vault. "I have a right to be here," she said sharply, though he heard a tremor in her voice. She was frightened, but trying to put on a brave front. She was average height for her species. She had large brown eyes with dark brown pupils. She had to turn her head to see him rather than all the way around, so she was clearly human and not a Solaran. She wore a white lab coat over a suit. She was one of the upper-level scientists, most likely. "The Solarans are on their way. All must evacuate. There are no human vessels on this level." She brushed past him towards the elevator unit, and he followed in behind her. They rode up in silence. "Emergency stop. Level 5 breach. Level 5 breach." "What's happening?" the human woman said out loud. She was likely in shock and not speaking directly to him, instead looking around wildly. He attempted to contact through his implant, but all information had been cut. Tenoch overrode the panel, opening the doors. It was a narrow jump up, but it would leave them on the ground level. "Go." Tenoch lifted her up so that she made it through the entrance. He followed quickly behind her. On the ground floor level there was chaos. Anhat were rushing towards the ships now, leaving the supplies on their pallets. Huiza raced over to him. The human woman was wandering through the crowd, likely looking for her people. "My communicator doesn't work. There is severe interference on all frequencies. Likely a Solaran device. They have spies here. Sabotage. 2 Garanga ships slammed into each other trying to leave from their port. Damaged the upper level." And countless lives, Tenoch thought with horror. Tenoch was a symbiotic creature. He and his serpent. He became aware of danger. It came suddenly, a sharp emotion of rage, as a door near the casino flew open and the explosion blew out. There was panic. It was a small explosion, but debris sprayed throughout the main floor. The panic started as coughing and yelling increased. The ships geared up to leave. Tenoch noticed the human woman still in the crowd, stumbling and pushing. She was barely able to stand. She would be pulled down in the panic and crushed underfoot. There was no way she would make the exit. He wasn't sure of the human woman's reaction, but he would take the risk. He whipped out his tail, pulling her into his grasp. He had to be careful. He hadn't been this close to a human. Her bones were more delicate than most species. He lifted her up. She wasn't heavy. He had her in a firm grip to prevent her from falling. With sirens blaring around them, he slithered quickly towards the Itzcoatl.